Welcome to another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. Along with me again is my co-host, Kent. And special guest, Sean Newton from Taiwan. He gonna keep reminding me. He's live in Taiwan. For those who are new to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report is a show / blog / podcast that discusses all things boxing. Our motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. The bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. Two main places to find information on the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. You can go to the official blog page for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. The link for that is P4P Boxing Report.wordpress.com. And repeat that, P4P Boxing Report.wordpress.com. You can also go to the podcast page. Link for that is P4P Boxing Report.podomatic.com. Let me repeat that, P4P Boxing Report.podomatic.com. On the blog page, you will find past episodes, links to past episodes, podcast episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. But you can also find blogs written by yours truly, as well as videos and other news and tidbits and whatnot. On the podcast page, you can find all past episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast. On the blog page as well as the podcast page, you would also find information on where to find us all over the internet, all over the interwebs, all over social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Google+, Tumblr, Podomatic, WordPress, Pinterest board, the RSS feed, and the link where you can donate your account. And the link to donate your account, be a friend, be a pal, be a buddy, donate your Twitter account. The link for that is donateyouraccount.com/P4P Boxing Report. Let me repeat that, donateyouraccount.com/P4P Boxing Report. And what happens is, if you donate your Twitter account, all tweets that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page, and the Twitter handle for that is at P4P Boxing Report. All tweets that come from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page, your Twitter account would automatically retweet all tweets that come from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page. With all those homework matters and all those issues out the way, and where to find us and all that, let's get the show started tonight, fellas, and do a recap of what went down this weekend boxing. Headlined by the turn of Robert the Ghost Guerrero, coming off his loss to Floyd Mayweather in May 2013. He took a long layoff, had some promotional issues that get settled, returned to the ring Saturday night in Carson, California. That's part of a triple header on Showtime to fight Yoshihiro Kamegai, 12-round welterweight bout. Guerrero winning by scores of 117, 111 on two scorecards, and 116, 112 on the third scorecard. And I'll go to you on this one, Kent. In spite of the scores, to me, and we did some back and forth talk about it on Facebook, and I did simultaneously some live tweeting on Twitter. To me, even though Guerrero got the decision, I thought it was a very close bout. It was back and back, toe-to-toe, phone booth warfare all the way. Kamegai, who has a reputation of making you fight, he made Guerrero fight from beginning to end, was always in his face, was always pressing the action. I think the class and the skill of Guerrero proved to be the difference at the end of the day. But Kamegai was able to find Guerrero with some shots to the head and the body, and I thought made Guerrero show some fatigue towards the middle rounds of the fight. But kudos to Guerrero for catching a second win, if you will, and taking over at the end, the last few rounds of the bout. But again, Ken, I'll go to you. Guerrero won, but he was made to fight.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I look at it this way. Guerrero did what he was expected to do, and that was win. But I don't think Guerrero, his advisor, Al Heyman, or any of the people that are around Robert Guerrero were expecting this type of fight. They weren't expecting a trench warfare. They weren't expecting a phone booth fight where both guys just were given and taking on the ropes. It was a very rough fight. It didn't go the way I think Robert Guerrero expected it to go. I think Guerrero wanted to box on the outside. I think he wanted to show people that he could fight from a distance and show his other skills. But from round one, it seemed like he was dragged into a war. which is typical of Robert Guerrero. He can't stick to a game plan if he tried. I mean, he always says in every fight, like against in a fight he's supposed to win, easier than he should, is that I'm going to box from the outside. I'm going to use my jab. I'm going to use my legs. I'm going to stay in the middle of the ring. But no, he once he gets tempted into a phone booth or into trench warfare, his plan always goes out the window. And that's a thing to take note of, you know. And that's a kind of a trend for him, is to just not stick to a game plan. And I think that cost him in the Mayweather fight. I think that cost him, you know, fights that should have been easier, especially against, you know, although he beat Berto somewhat easily, he made it tougher on himself by going into a phone booth and, you know, trading back and forth. And I think and even the Ideen fight, he fell into the habit of trading. And I think that's going to cost him again when he steps up once he steps up to either a borderline elite or an elite fighter. It's going to come back to haunt him. And I think he looked good for what it was worth. He looked good. He did what he had to do to win. I thought it was a close fight. I didn't necessarily agree with the scoring completely. But he made it tougher on himself. I mean, listen, Kamegai came to fight. Kamegai imprinted, you know, his fight on Guerrero. He was able to land shots to the body and to the head. I mean, big shots. You know, one of them ended up, you know, cutting, you know, Guerrero's eye and puffing it up, and the thing was, I think if Kamegai was able to follow up on that, I think he could have got the fight stopped on that cut. But he just simply wasn't able to maintain all the momentum he had in the middle rounds. I think Guerrero in the later rounds showed his class, showed some of the skill that he should have shown earlier in the fight, and he was able to win, you know, the later rounds comfortably. And I think he pulled it out in the end. But I just think he didn't fight a smart fight. I thought he won, but he didn't fight smart at all.
Brutal fight. I'll go see when this was Sean. Indeed, a brutal back and forth fight, as I mentioned before. When you assess the performance of Ghost Guerrero, do you think that it was a case of he underestimated Kamegai? Was Kamegai better than we thought? Did the long layoff have anything to do with his performance? Was he exposed again as not being necessarily the fighter that people think he is? Set aside the Mayweather fight, he was going to beat him anyway, regardless. Your analysis of the fight and your view of Robert Guerrero at this point of his career.
This just reinforces everything I was saying before the Mayweather fight. He's a limited fighter. At 147, he's never beat a top 10 fighter. He's always shown only limited. You know, for a guy that came from the lower weights and was supposed to be a fairly decent boxer and have like an assortment of skills, since he's moved up to 147, all he's shown is heart and tough.
Can I interrupt you right quick? To me, this just proves that the reason he went up to 147 was to get the Mayweather fight and the money. And I think he's still, in my opinion, a lightweight / junior welterweight to begin with. Am I wrong in my assessment here?
Well, I think it's true because, I mean, he never had power. Even when he was champion at 135, I mean, he didn't have power. He was mostly just a tenacious guy that was versatile and had skills and could adapt. But even at that weight, who did he beat? He's never beaten a top-level fighter at any weight since he's had a belt. I mean, he's a good fighter, but, I mean, he's far from great. He never deserved a Mayweather fight. He's never shown skills to put him at an elite level. And this just shows you, against a guy who basically is, you know, I wouldn't even call him a fringe competitor. He's a guy that they knew was going to put on a good fight, had a good record, and they figured it would be an easy pick for Guerrero to sort of jump back into the mix. There's a reason Guerrero doesn't want to fight the top guys, because he's going to get his ass knocked out.
I'm going to say right now that the one thing I can all tell you about, all you need to know about Guerrero is the fact he was beaten by Gamboa Diaz Orlando Salido early in his career. Notwithstanding the Salido fight, it was overturned. But the point is, if guys like that can outbox you or just outfight you, you're not as good as they say you are. It just facts are facts. And I'm going to tell you something. The one thing I will say about Guerrero, he did look like a welterweight on Saturday. I think that new training regimen he went under, I think that did help him in a way. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think he's a very smart fighter. I just don't get the impression that number one, he can't crack an egg, okay, number one. Number two, he talks about, like fighting a certain way, having a game plan, but he never executes the game plan. He comes out in the first round and doesn't do anything he's supposed to do or what he plans on doing. And listen, Floyd was going to beat him anyway. But the point is, he didn't do anything that he said he was going to do in the Floyd fight. He was like, oh, I'm going to push him against the ropes. I'm going to rough him up. I'm going to make him feel the pace. I'm going to make him feel his age. I'm going to, do what I have to do to make it a really tough night for him. And guess what he did? Absolutely nothing. He's the type of guy that just doesn't execute when it matters. He doesn't execute anything. He doesn't execute game plans. He doesn't have power. He's a you know what? I think do
you think he needs a change of trainers? Do you think he needs to leave his father as a trainer?
Listen. It doesn't matter who's training him at this point. He's just not going to get any better. You know what he is? He's an A- B-level fighter who's gotten a lot more press than he should have. Okay, I think he used the sob story about his wife to the max, and he got the entire gravy train rolling on that. That's what got him the Floyd fight, okay? Let's be honest. And if people are going to hate on that and say, oh, you're just hating on Robert Guerrero. No, I'm not hating on Robert Guerrero. Robert Guerrero is smart enough to know you can use the media to have people eating out of your palms. And that's what he did. That's all he did. Do you think the performance against Berto deserved him a Floyd fight? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He didn't deserve it. Do you think the Ideen fight should have got him a Floyd fight? No. Because you didn't impress anybody. You showed heart. We give you that. Yeah, you showed heart. You're a warrior. We get that. You're tough. You're tough as nails, and you can go to war. And more often than not, when you fight like that, you'll win. But it doesn't impress me. It doesn't impress me at all. And I think the next guy that he fights, he's going to get beat. I don't care. I personally think if he fights somebody like Thurman or whoever they got in the pipeline, he's going to lose. He's just not that. He's not good enough, I don't think, at this level to win. I think he gets too much. I think, first of all, everybody talks about, oh, well, he was a world champion and this, that, and the other thing. Let me tell you something. His run at featherweight was one of the poorest runs I've ever seen in my life. Okay? All right? He lost. He beat a guy named Eric Aiken for the belt. Eric Aiken should have never been a world champ to begin with. Go look up, if you can find any Eric Aiken fights, I'd be very surprised on YouTube. But the fact of the matter is, he beat a guy that had no business being world champion, and then you went and you fought a string of I think his very first defense he got beat, but it was overturned. And that was against Orlando Salido.
Right.
How good are you if you're losing? And no diss to Orlando Salido, he's proven himself. But the point is, if Guerrero was any good, if he was any of the fighter that they said he was, he wouldn't have lost to Salido. End of story. He basically got his belt back because the result was overturned. He lost his belt to Salido, but then it was overturned and he got his belt back. What a glorious way to get your belt, to defend your title. What a glorious way, because allegedly Solito he failed the test allegedly. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't cheat or whatever, but at the time Guerrero was kind of a guy they were pumping, so they a loss to Solito would have been disastrous. So I think a lot of politics played into that, but it's the truth. He hasn't beaten anybody of substance in his entire career. He's beaten a lot of good fighters. I mean B fighters. I'll give him that, but he's never beaten an A-level fighter, a truly elite fighter. And right there, that just shows you he's not as good as they say he is, or he believes he's getting a Floyd rematch. I'm like, dude, just enjoy the money you got from that, please. Just enjoy the money you got. Enjoy what you got from that fight, the exposure that you probably didn't deserve, and the money you probably didn't deserve to begin with. That's it. I think the next guy he fights, he gets beat. I wasn't impressed. I mean, he won, but I wasn't impressed Saturday night.
Talking about the future, you mentioned Keith Thurman. Originally, Ghost Guerrero was offered a fight against Keith Thurman, who's the interim champion at WBA interim champion at 147 pounds. When you look at the welterweight landscape with Thurman, Sean Porter, who's set to fight Kell Brook in August, and I said this on all over the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, multiple pages, Facebook, Google Plus, even on Twitter. Thank goodness that he didn't take that fight with Thurman, because at this point, given how he looked against Kamegai, I don't see him beating Thurman, Sean Porter, or Kell Brook for that matter. I'll go to you on this one, Sean, and you can follow up, Ken. The future of Robert Guerrero, where do you see it? Because I repeat, cannot rank him amongst the top dogs at 147 pounds based off of this performance against Kamegai.
I think the best thing he can do, and especially now that he has a cut, so he's going to be out for a little bit, healing, I mean, is try to get a fight with Khan. I mean, Khan is also not a big guy, doesn't have so much pop, and it might be a guy that he can muscle and use that style with to get the victory. And beating a guy like Khan could propel him into a big money fight, which is what he wants. So regardless of what he did after that, it wouldn't matter. Because I think it shows that basically now he's just trying to position himself for the biggest money fight possible. And a fight like that he just had, actually, it's good for him. He looked vulnerable, but I mean, people like that. It's marketable. It was an exciting fight. So it's not going to hurt his stock as far as like being able to make a fight. If he can avoid one of the better guys and get in with Khan, I mean, he could beat Khan.
Even given how Khan looked in his last fight.
Yeah, but Khan fought Collazo, who basically, I mean, only was there because he beat Ortiz. And I mean, I don't have much respect for Ortiz. I mean, another ex-Floyd Mayweather fighter. I mean, he's beatable. He's a quitter. I mean, he's perfect guy for a old veteran to fight because he doesn't have any heart. And for Khan to beat him, I mean, basically he was just trying to land one punch to knock Khan out the whole fight, so he was easy pickings. I think Guerrero will be tougher than Collazo because I think he will use more than one hand, and I think he will be able to push it a little more.
Your thoughts, Kent?
You know, I think the complete opposite about a Khan fight. I think Khan would go in there. Like, we know that Khan can be beaten, and he can be hurt, and he can be knocked out. That's established. That has been established, okay? You know, in his fights with Garcia, and when an old man like Julio Diaz can hurt you, and the Prescott fight. But my last impression of Khan, the way he fought against Collazo, was great. That's the way he should have been fighting for a long time. But he didn't. He was a hardhead. He was a stupid. You know, he was stupid, you know. But I think in a fight with Guerrero, I think he would fight like that. I think he would fight a smart fight. He certainly fights smarter than Guerrero fights. Because remember, Guerrero he says he has game plans but never follows through. And I think Khan could outbox him easily if he just sticks to the way he fought against Collazo. He could outbox Guerrero. I think Thurman stops him late. I think Porter beats him up. I just don't see anybody. I don't see anybody on that level he can really beat. Even Khan. I think if Khan fights smart and he holds and he stays at the outside and he uses speed and he fights smart, I think he beats Guerrero. I think he boxes circles around Guerrero. I just don't think Guerrero's that good. Not that I think Khan is a great prize, but I think he's a lot smarter and a lot more skillful fighter than Guerrero.
Yeah, and the thing for me is when looking at Guerrero, you think up for a guy moving up originally at featherweight, going up to 147 pounds. You think that he would have the advantage in speed, but when you assess him and compare him against the top fighters at 147, it's his lack of speed, hand and foot, that will cause him major problems, and his lazy defense that will cause him lazy problems against the likes of, forget Floyd Manage, because please, let's not go there. But when you look at the names I mentioned, Porter, Khan, Thurman, Kell Brook, even a Devon Alexander, who we'll talk about later, they all have the speed advantage over him. I think they're all better boxers than he is, and I think they're all better defensively. So they were able to see and avoid Guerrero's punches at this point. So when I look at Guerrero against the top fighters at 147 pounds, I just do not see it at this point. And maybe the best move, if he wants to, would probably be to move back down to 140 pounds, maybe tackle the top junior welterweights in the world there, maybe the Danny Garcias and Petersons, newly crowned champion Chris Algieri's of the world.
No, I don't see him doing that. You know why? Because he's got the taste of the
money.
Now he's got a taste of big money. He ain't going back down to 40. He ain't gonna take a pay cut. Although,
you're right.
Mark,
I was trying to be rational here. He's gonna
go. No. But we know once you get to a level like Guerrero does, and you get the payday he's gotten, rationality goes out the window. Okay, and I'm gonna say right now that you ever notice with Guerrero, they always match him up with guys that are slow-footed, slow in general, and that's why he looks so good. Because he matches them up with the right guys, or guys that simply fall into certain bad habits. You never see, whenever he's fought somebody with speed or quickness, or was just able to outfight him and have a game plan and fight smart, he hasn't won. That's it. Mayweather made him look like a plum amateur in that fight. The fact of the matter is, Guerrero wasn't even pay-per-view worthy. He should be lucky to even have gotten that fight. He should be thanking for it. If he's on his deathbed, when he gets to his deathbed in about 50 years, he should be thanking for it for that fight, because he had no business being in that on pay-per-view or anything like that. And even guys like, if you look at the other end, like Bradley and Marquez, I think they even beat him. I just don't see anything to suggest that.
And excuse me for not mentioning Timothy Bradley. He's deserved to be in discussion too. Bradley will beat him as well.
Yep, but I try not to mention like Bradley right now, because he may be in negotiations to fight Cotto, which is crazy as it sounds. I mean, it's a good fight. It's a super fight, but I mean, if he stayed at 47, and he fought Guerrero, he beat Guerrero quite easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to talk about the other bouts on this card at Carson, California. The StubHub's main undercard bout for this triple header on Showtime was Vasyl Lomachenko scoring a 12-round win.
That was the real main event.
Right, absolutely. Impressive win, I should mention, over Gary Russell Jr. To capture the vacant WBO Featherweight belt. When we talked about the show last week, I was mentioning that Lomachenko was the favorite, but I thought Gary Russell Jr. had a decent shot. as it proved, he didn't even have a decent shot. To me, I think no. From round 1 on, you can tell that Loma, as we call him in the boxing world, was the superior fighter throughout. Better boxer. His hand speed was equivalent, maybe slightly better than Russell Jr. The punching power was there. And for me, and Paulie Malignaggi made this mention during the fight, it seemed as if Lomachenko, who has technically 2 professional fights, we all know that's kind of iffy there.
He has 9 professional fights.
Right.
He's really 8-1.
When you count the World Boxing Council,
I'm going to tell you right now.
Let me finish this, Kent. That he made Russell seem to be the amateur fight, and I think that what Lomachenko went through against Salido really showed itself against Gary Russell. He not only boxed Gary Russell, he out-physical Gary Russell. He beat Gary Russell up over time. Just a thorough, complete performance here by Vasyl Lomachenko.
Oh, I agree. Let me tell you something. People need to realize that just because BoxRec reports 2-1, don't listen to BoxRec. Don't even take them at face value. Lomachenko has 6 other fights that are on fight backs, and they are all World Series of Boxing fights, and they're all considered pro fights because Lomachenko took money. So he's technically an 8-1 fighter. He's not a 1-1 fighter like everybody was going around in the boxing media, because they all follow BoxRec, and the fact of the matter is BoxRec has their own politics, and they don't follow the Fight Facts, and Fight Facts is technically the most official boxing record keeper out there, and everybody should realize that. That being said, Lomachenko looked great. He boxed beautifully. He went to the body. He used his jab effectively. He just made Russell look very amateurish and very this overmatched. It was clear who was the more skilled guy, the smarter fighter, the most technically adept fighter, and that was Lomachenko. He showed how to break down a guy who uses speed and his legs. You go to the body early, and you just go from there. And as the fight went on, he was able to land to the head more effectively because of a lot of the body work. And he, over the second half of the fight, he really beat up Russell. There was like the 10th, 11th, and 12th round, Gary Russell looked bad. I was like wondering maybe they should just stop the fight because he was getting beaten up and he just didn't look good. But be that as may, he made it the distance. He showed a lot of heart, a lot of intestinal fortitude. He showed what he was made of on the inside, but he was just overmatched. He couldn't land a clean shot on Lomachenko. Out of all the punches he threw, he only landed 10% of the shots. But somehow some idiot judge, Lisa Giampa, scored at 114-114.
And that's why I didn't mention the scorecards, because I don't want to go there.
No, but I want to make it clear to people that was a one-sided fight. Lomachenko did everything that a fighter should do. Effective defense, effective offense, ring generalship. Everything he did was perfect. And Russell could not do anything about it. The only thing that Russell had early on in that fight was maybe the speed, but as soon as the body work really started kicking in, he wasn't as fast as he was early in the fight. Russell is a good fighter, but he had never fought anyone on a world-class level. Not one fighter. Now, go look at his record. Everybody was like, oh, he has pro experience. He's 26-0 or 27-0, and people were like, oh, that's going to be enough to beat Lomachenko. No. Skill wins fights. Okay, it's good to have, experience in the pro ring, but Lomachenko is about as experienced as any pro fighter out there. Okay, he had 400 amateur fights. He lost one of those fights, allegedly. I don't know his official record. That's what they report. And he avenged that loss 2 times. Okay? And that's an equivalent to probably 15 or 20 fights as a pro. Those 400 fights, and then you count the 6 World Series of Boxing fights. That's even more pro experience. So you had a guy with a bunch of those fights and one loss, a disputed loss to Salido. He's only lost twice. If you count amateur and pro, he's only lost twice in his entire life. And the way he fought against Russell, he learned so much from the Salido fight. He showed he can be an inside fighter. People questioned that he could be an inside fighter after the Salido fight. Well, I don't think they'll be questioning that much longer, because he showed he can fight on the inside, he can fight on the outside. He can do anything he wants against a guy like Russell. I can't wait for him to fight some of the top guys at 126, because I think he would even step up his game even more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go see you on this, Sean. Quickly, your assessment of the Lomachenko win over Gary Russell, and talk about what could be happening moving forward, as Bob Arum hinted at a possibility of a featherweight tournament starting in 2015. I mentioned this immediately immediately on Twitter and Facebook immediately after the fight. Maybe someone retweeted what I said and he caught word of it and decided to, hey, let's do a tournament. But your thoughts on Lomachenko, and quickly your thoughts on the Lomachenko win, and your thoughts going forward about a possible featherweight tournament at 126 pounds, which I would really look forward to. I would really like.
Like I said last week, I had no doubt that Lomachenko was class and that he would be able to beat Russell. And not taking anything about Russell. I mean, if there was a featherweight tournament, I think Russell very well should be in it, because I think a few of the top guys he would beat. It's just that a guy like Lomachenko has fought boxers, guys with fast hands. It's nothing he hasn't seen. So I didn't think Russell was going to be able to bring anything new, anything that he wasn't able to adjust to. The problem when he lost to Salido, I mean, he dealt with a dirty, rough customer who brought everything into the ring, including the kitchen sink, and he just didn't have the experience as a pro to deal with that kind of stuff. But as far as a classy fighter, I mean, he's more than able to deal and adjust. And like many people said, he had no inside fight, but he did. You can watch his World Boxing Series fights, and he fought top quality amateurs, like the best guys from around the world, including the guy that beat him the one time. And you could see in the pro style how well he did, and how well his movement and speed and using of space worked for him. If he would have had gloves that were normal, I mean, he would have had a lot more knockouts as well in the WBS. I think the tournament will be excellent. I mean, right now it's exciting because there's just like a lot of good fighters, and it'd be great to see them all get in there and tangle with one another. Donaire, Gradovich, Lomachenko, Gary Russell, the Jamaican guy, I can't remember, I always forget his name.
Nicholas Walters.
Nicholas Walters. I mean, even that South African guy that just lost to Donaire, Vendeka. You know, I mean, it's a group of great fighters, and it'll be really excellent to see. Also, there's been lots of talk about him fighting Rigo, but I don't see that happening because Rigo showed that he's not interested in moving to 126. And if I was Lomo, why would I move to 122 to fight a guy that doesn't bring money? Because it's not like you're going to get rich fighting him. You might as well just stay at this weight where you have names and you don't need to adjust and go down to Kauto to some guy and then, you know, make your name there. Rigo can enjoy himself by himself in the basement.
You know what? You know what? You know what? You know what? Come on, man.
No, but you got
Rigo hurts himself because he thinks he's a superstar and he wants lots of cash, and he's not willing to just fight.
See, that's the thing. This is the thing with Rigo, and I ain't hating on Rigo. Okay, I think he's an amazingly skilled guy. But the problem is, Top Rank is trying to give people fan-friendly fights, and that's their goal, right or wrong. You know, that's just been their mantra for years, and they have sat him down in closed-door meetings and asked him to show some more fire. or to show something that, like, if you have an opponent like ready to go, finish him. But he just chooses to fight in the same style. He never leaves first gear, and that's the big reason why Top Rank is not re-signing him. That is the biggest reason, because he doesn't fit into what Top Rank is trying to do. As much, listen, I get that people love him and they're like, oh, he's got amazing skill. Why is he being hated on? He's just not exciting enough. They gave him an opportunity, okay? Listen, they gave him an opportunity. Top Rank gave Rigondeaux an opportunity to prove himself in a main event, and guess what? He stunk out the joint. He fought in first gear the entire fight, and people literally walked out. When you walk out of a venue and you're a promoter during the main event, there's a problem. And it's not Top Rank's problem. It's Rigondeaux's problem. And as much as I think he's a skillful guy and a great fighter, he does nothing to make people want to follow him. He does nothing. He does nothing exciting. His skill is not enough to get him a following. And that's why Top Rank's not doing business with him after this fight coming up. And it's not because it's hate. It's just the reality is it's still an entertainment business. And if you're not entertaining anybody, you ain't making money. Plain and simple.
I hear you. But you know, I'm a Rigo fan all the way.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a Rigo fan too. But I
am the one who will make defense about those who say he's boring in this and boring in. I concede your point, but hey, I'm a fan, and you're right. To a large extent, you're right. But
I'm a fan too. But I realize that in boxing, it's still a business, and you still have, and the goal is to make money.
And I do say that folks undermine him, namely HBO, by. Yeah, he may have this attitude, but there are folks on the other end who could do him justice by putting him in fights against opponents who will make Rigo bring the best out of him. That's all I'm saying.
And you see, the problem with that is they've already tried that with Edgebecco. They've really tried that, and he shut Edgebecco down, and a lot of that I think had to do with the fact that Rigo really didn't offer enough offense for Edgebecco to make Edgebecco really fight. I think that was the goal of that fight, and Rigo just simply did not do enough to make Edgebecco open up.
He did not look good enough, or he was just that dominant. He just neutralized everything Edgebecco could do.
I think he was dominant, but also you got to remember Rigo offered very little offense. He only threw punches when he felt comfortable throwing punches. I mean, it was really a safety-first performance, if you ask me.
Go ahead,
Sean.
Do you think, Rigo, this tournament's being made at 126? It would be excellent. Everybody would get lots of push. It would be like 168, where Ward really made a name for himself. Also a guy that people question his style as far as being entertaining to watch. But he's become a big fighter, #2 pound per pound because of that. Do you think Rigo would go up to 126 and enter this tournament?
Well, I think from what I've understood is that Rigo doesn't want to move up to 126. He says he's staying at 122. And the simple fact of the matter is, with his relationship with his quote-unquote relationship with Top Rank coming to an end, would he really be in a tournament? I mean, if you're trying to cut ties with him and you have issues with him, you wouldn't have a guy like that in the tournament. And I think that would kill. I think what Top Rank is trying to do is make exciting fights, and they know Rigo and his mindset as a fighter, he's not going to do that. See, the thing is, with 168, you got to understand, at 68, when they did the Super 6, it was all fighters that wanted to fight. They understood what was on the line, and they would bring out the bat, and they brought their A game in every fight. Even Ward, and I don't think he's the most a pleasing guy to watch at times either. But the point is, it brought out something in these guys, and they made for really good fights. I don't know if Rigo would be willing to would really step up his game. I don't know. I don't know. I think he's the type of guy that just, is satisfied in fighting in one style, and he's just not going to make pleasing fights unless he takes, the bull by the horns and just steps up his game. Shows more aggression. That's the one thing I think he needs to do, is show more aggression, and he hasn't shown that. And I wish that he would, because he could be an exciting fighter, and his great skill is just not enough if you're not doing anything exciting with it.
Okay, we're gonna have to have this discussion another day about Rigo. We're gonna have to go all into it. Let's talk about the other fight on that card, which was Devon Alexander coming back from his loss to Shawn Porter, losing his IBF welterweight belt. Scored a really, really good win over Jesus Soto Karass. Let's move through this fight quickly. I'll go to you on this one, Sean. You said that Devon Alexander would win and he would look impressive in doing so. And he did. He sat there and fought with Karass more than I thought he would. Very effective inside and out. I was kind of surprised about his body punching, about his inside fighting, which he did not show against Porter and in his loss to Timothy Bradley a few years back. And when you look at Devon Alexander, one of the more impressive performances of his career.
I guess. I mean, the reason I was confident he was winning is because he was fighting a limited guy in Soto Karass, who is not really a top 15, 147 fighter. A guy that has slow feet, slow hands, is easy to hit. I thought he was basically tailor-made for Alexander. But people love to hate, after Alexander got swamped by Porter, who is a mugging type of fighter, but faster, quicker, brings a lot of assets that Soto Karass doesn't have. I didn't think they were similar fights. That kind of guy is good for Alexander, and I thought Alexander did a good job trying to be exciting. He got in there. He didn't just run the whole fight. He tried to mix it up a bit, see if he could maybe knock Soto Karass out, try to build himself back up, which is what he should do. I guess not unlike Guerrero, who made another exciting fight and is going to get a good fight out of it. I mean, Alexander's sort of doing the same thing. That would be a possibility for a good fight next. They're both sort of at a crossroads. You could put Guerrero against Porter in there and see who can step it up. Or not Porter, Alexander and Guerrero.
Quickly, Kid, your assessment on Alexander's win over Soto Karass?
He's entertaining. I mean, he boxed the first half of the fight, and then, he kind of mixed it up in the second half of the fight, and I think he kind of marketed himself by mixing it up in the second half with Karass. Karass was just not fast enough, he just wasn't fast enough to catch Alexander. The real thing that I think helped Alexander win that fight was a lot of the body work, because even in the second half of the fight when they were mixing it up, Karass's punches weren't the same. They weren't heavy shots. They were good punches, but they weren't anything damaging or heavy or anything to hurt Alexander. So I think he had a good performance. He outboxed, Karass. He did what he had to do, and he marketed himself a little bit in the second half by going to war a little bit. It was a very good fight in the second half. Even the first half I enjoyed, because there was always like a moment where he stood in front of Karass and Karass was able to hit him a few times. So, I mean, it was a good fight. He marketed himself, and he goes on to the next fight.
I want to skip talking about Chad Dawson's win over George Blades, mainly because it was nothing much to talk about. The main thing in that fight was the weight of Chad Dawson. He was really overweight, but I'm going to give him a pass on that, and I think he deserves a pass on that. I want to move towards a fight that took place overseas, featuring WBA Strawweight champion. Excuse me, we're about to get into, again, Boxing Nerdland. We talk about Boxing Nerdland and Boxing Geekdom a lot on the show. well, we're about to go there again. A doubleheader that took place in Monte Carlo, featuring Hekkie Budler again, 26-year-old strawweight champion from South Africa. He fought a Thai fighter by the name of Kokietgym, Pigmy Kokietgym, scored an 8th round KO. I'll go to you on this, Ken. We've mentioned Budler on the show, I believe, before when he beat Nkoto Nati Joy last year, I believe it was, beat him by decision. Talk about Butler's performance and talk about what I think is the rising cachet and profile of Budler. And the reason I mention that because he's already a crossover star, an emerging crossover star in South Africa. And it seems as if Rodney Berman, his promoter, is trying to make him more of an international star with this fight happening in Monte Carlo, excuse me.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to tell you, Butler is slowly and in rising tide amongst strawweights. He boxed very, very well against Pigmy Kokietgym. One of the things I think he did very well in that fight is went to the body.
Scored 3 knockdowns in that fight, all with body shots, I believe.
Yes, he went a lot to the body. He invested a lot of body work. He boxed effectively from the outside. Kokietgym was a tough opponent. Not a pushover, but clearly not in the class of Budler. And he looked really good. He boxed very well. He went to the body and he got a stoppage on body shots. And I think that he looked about as good as you could look against a guy that was a class or two below him. The talk is to have him fight Katsunari Takayama of Japan, I believe in the fall. I think it'd be a great fight. I think it'd be an excellent fight. And I think that's the next step. But Mike is right. Butler's getting a following in South Africa. He's quite popular. He's a little bit of a character. With the purple hair and the different color hair. And he's something different for boxing, and I think he promotes himself well. With that, and his being a character and getting a following, and I think he's the type of fighter to keep an eye on. I think he has a real good shot of beating Takayama. I think he has a real good shot of beating the top dog in the division. So time will tell how this goes, but he looked really good on Saturday.
You mentioned Takayama, of course, a guy who lost to Joy twice in successive title shot opportunities. I want to go to you on this one, Sean. Have you seen Budler fight? How much do you know about him and your thoughts on him as a fighter?
I've seen his name up there in the rankings, but I haven't seen his fights yet. So
well, I will give you this. The fight with Pigmy Kokietgym, you can find it on YouTube. It was aired. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ken. It was aired by Box Nation.
Yeah, you can find actually several of Budler's fights. He had a fight with, I believe, an Argentinian that was aired in Argentina, and that's on, I believe, on YouTube. I believe his fight with Joy is probably on YouTube, but he's got a couple of his fights on YouTube. He's growing a little bit of a following.
Yeah, let me look it up right quick. Give me a quick second. And while I do that, I'm going to talk about another fight on that card as Martin Murray, who had a very close fight with Sergio Martinez, I believe, last year. Made a return to the ring against a guy by the name of Max Bursak, and I'll go see you on this one, Sean. Murray, my problem with him with the Martinez fight was he wasn't active enough. In this fight, he was. In the end, this was again another impressive performance, definitive performance by Martin Murray. Talk is not as much about the fight, but talk about where did you see Murray right now in his career? I know he turned down a fight against. He wasn't ready for a fight with Triple G. That's why he turned it down. With this win, I think it puts him right back into the title picture at 160.
Well, I mean, coming off of Sergio's fight, which many people thought he won, and then coming and fighting another guy that's a legitimate fighter and getting an impressive win, obviously is going to help his stock. I mean, he's young, he looks impressive. The one thing I agree with you, that's when I watched him fight before, he just looked like he wasn't active enough. He could have pushed, he could have been more aggressive. because he's a pretty big boy. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he could gradually, easily move up to the next weight.
Yeah,
But
he got a big frame for middleweight. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and you know, with GGG looking for opponents, I think he would give him a good fight. He's not a small guy. Unlike Gil, who's a pretty thin, you know, he's 160, but I mean, obviously he doesn't have much growth left in him. He's more reliant on being a slick sort of boxer. Whereas Murray has shown that he's tough, he hits hard. I mean, he's tough to hit because he's really focused on keeping his hands up and being defensive. It would be an interesting fight down the line. I think at this stage, he's probably top 3 at 160.
Top 3.
I would say GGG. I guess you have to put Cotto up there now because he's the champion, and then Murray.
That's very interesting. And then let me interrupt here. We'll mention Hekkie Budler. His fight is indeed on YouTube. His last fight against Kokietgym. Just do a search on YouTube. Hekkie, that's his first name. Budler, Budler. Do a search of that, and then once you do a search of that, just once you click in his name, and you should be able to find his fight against Kokietgym on YouTube. It's on there right now in full. You mentioned Martin Murray. You think he's top 3 middleweight right now. I talked about the fight against Triple G. You mentioned he's right up there with Cotto, number 2. Sean, and this is a follow-up question. Given that he turned down the fight because he wasn't ready with Triple G, what do you see if that fight should happen between Murray and Triple G? I think it would be a better fight than Triple G's upcoming fight with Daniel Gill. Your thoughts?
No, I agree. I think Triple G is just going to run through Gill. I don't know if he's tough enough to take it. I mean, he wasn't tough enough against Barker, who is far from a tough guy. So, I mean, I don't know what he's going to do when he fights like a serious threat like GGG. I think Murray, I think he would lose a fight, but I mean, I feel pretty confident he would probably go 12 rounds, and he would have his moments. But I think it's the type of fight that would be good for GGG, running into a guy that's not an easy pushover, a guy that's tough and will make it hard on him.
And then let me clarify.
It would be a good fight probably for the.
Seems Sean has lost the connection. Oh, you're back, Sean. I will go to you on that, Ken. You can answer the question as well. And what I mentioned, let me clarify when I said he wasn't ready. Coming off the long layoff, Murray felt like he wasn't given enough time to get in enough physical shape to fight a Triple G at the time the fight was offered. Now that he's back fully in shape, your thoughts, should the fight with Murray and Triple G, should that happen? Should it finally take place, Ken? Your thoughts on that bout, on a potential bout?
Yeah, I think it should happen. I'll be honest. I saw the Murray Bursak fight. I mean, I was impressed with the skill. It wasn't an exciting performance. It was very workmanlike, very, typical of Martin Murray. He did what he had to do when he won against a tough guy like Bursak who comes forward. I think he would give Triple G a good fight. I really do. I think he would probably go into the late rounds. I think he would give Triple G some trouble with his hand speed and his counter punching. But at the end of the day, I think Triple G would stop him late or win a decision. And I think that would be a good fight. I think that should happen, if not later this year, early next, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking it will happen. I think the fight will happen again. Will happen eventually, sometime the first quarter, 2015 maybe. So I look for that fight to finally happen now that Murray, he's back. Fighting, and he's going to be fighting pretty regularly, from what I understand.
Yeah, from what I understand, Rodney Berman, who's now his promoter, is going to keep him busy. He had him a fight, I believe, a couple months ago in South Africa against a fairly pedestrian opponent who was able to win that fight, and then he won the fight with Bursak. So I think he'll be fighting again shortly, within the next few months, I would assume.
So let's go to the news segment, the news portion of the show. Excuse me. And you sent me, and kudos to you, Ken. You sent me this information late this afternoon. I'll just say, let the games begin. We talked about how Schaefer and Heyman are left Golden Boy. Last week, news broke that it seems like Heyman and Schaefer, I believe, are on good terms. Well, today, are back on good terms. It seems today that Golden Boy has filed a $50 million lawsuit against Schaefer. Basically, the lawsuit is about basically trying to hold Schaefer to his contract, which goes through March of 2018, saying that he should oblige, he should stick to that contract. When he reached for comment to De La Hoya, he really didn't offer any comment towards the lawsuit. I'll go to you on this, Ken. You can follow up, Sean. I see the lawsuit. I don't see any real substance behind it. Since you brought the story to me later on this afternoon, break down this lawsuit and what does it mean, really? Because I don't see much meaning in this lawsuit by Golden Boy, by De La Hoya against Richard Schaefer.
You know what I think it's about? It's about holding Richard Schaefer until March of 2018 into his contract, where he doesn't go and begin his own business venture, and I think that's the goal of the lawsuit. And I think there's some money involved where back money that needs to be paid in regards to the contract. He didn't fulfill the deal, so there's probably money that he had to return. And I think the goal of the lawsuit is to prevent him from doing, going forward with his plans. And I believe that this is gonna go to mediation, and I believe that, from what I understand, that I believe, not the money, I believe that they're gonna go to mediation, and I think they'll come to an agreement where the cooling off period will be made shorter, and I think the money, there will be some sort of financial compensation given to Golden Boy, and I think they'll part ways on that. I don't think it's anything, I don't think it'll be dragged out. I think this is just a simple matter of wanting to leave Golden Boy and not be held to the complete terms of the contract, and I think that's just the goal of this whole situation. And regardless, we all know that Schaefer's going to go and work with Al Heyman. We all know that's going to happen. No comment on that, yeah, he's going to start working with Heyman probably in the next couple of years on something, promotion. As it stands right now, Golden Boy and Al Heyman are still working together as it stands right now, but I don't think that's going to last. I think it's basically just until the business, the upcoming business arrangements are cleared out of the way. I think it won't last not much longer than another year at most. And basically, if you look at the August 9th card, if it's even call it a card.
Do we have to?
No, we don't. But if you look at that card and look at the way Danny Garcia, Lamont Peterson, and Danny Jacobs are matched up, you can see that it's just about the obligations, getting the obligations out of the way, and getting, Al out of the way, and that relationship. And it just shows that Oscar wants no part of any other, anything to do with Al, I think. As regards of putting together fights, I think it's just a comfortable relationship for now until they can move on, and that's basically what it is.
Your thoughts on the lawsuit filed by Golden Boy against Schaefer, Sean?
Well, I think Golden Boy is just doing what they need to do. You know, you're trying to make sure that you don't have somebody taking money out of your pockets by promoting fighters. They're still trying to work their way through probably all that shitstorm that Schaefer created, as far as like signing guys to Heyman but not to Golden Boy and cross promotion type of stuff, just to see where they're at. So they're probably just laying a paper trail to protect themselves down the road, just so that they know that they're not going to get taken advantage of by these type of moves that have been put into play. And like Ken was saying, I'm sure they're also just looking to smooth things out so it's a smooth transition for everybody. Because of course Golden Boy has been talking, at least Oscar, about how one. So you want to protect yourself, but you also want to sort of try to end things on a positive sort of ground where everybody feels comfortable, and then you can sort of keep dialogue open, hopefully down the road. The last thing we need is a three-way Cold War.
Well, I don't think it'll be a three-way Cold War, but I do believe that with Bob and Oscar working together now, it seems like they're on the same page, and they look like they've aligned themselves with each other, and they're going to do a lot of business for the foreseeable future. I think it's just a situation where Richard Schaefer and Al Heyman don't want Oscar doing business with Bob Arum, and they're not getting what they want, so they're mad, and they're saying now they're getting what they kind of want, which is their own promotional deal where they don't have to work with anybody. They can march to the beat of their own drum, and they don't have to answer to anyone. And I wish them well on their little venture, because as I've said in the past, I think it's only going to be a positive thing for a short term. I don't think it's going to be anything long term. And I think that I give Oscar and Bob the blessing to work together, because that's what makes boxing run.
But the thing is not Oscar. He's not just going to open up to Bob. He's going to open up for everybody. I mean, there's rumors he's doing stuff with 50 Cent. There's still rumors he's doing stuff with Mike Tyson.
Yeah,
we're going to be talking about Eddie Hearn in a short bit.
Yes.
But don't be surprised if he does work with Eddie Hearn, while Schaefer and Heyman are separating themselves off. Oscar, all thing he's going to do, he's going to open up his doors for everybody, expand the brand for everybody.
Right, and that's what boxing needs right now. Everybody opened up and everybody working together and almost on the same page. But the big thing with the entire, him opening himself up was the Bob Arum thing. That was always going to be the big thing, because that was the first step in ending the whole. That was the first step of opening up tearing down the wall. Like that was the first step. And now I think he's going to be working with everybody. I think everybody wants to be involved. I think a lot of people didn't want to work with Golden Boy because of the environment. I think when you have people like Richard Schaefer and Al Heyman who want to keep things between them, you kind of rub people the wrong way. And I think once you show that you're going to open things up, and people are going to gravitate to you because they see that you want the common denominator at the end of the day when it comes to boxing is money. And if you're not working together, no one's making any money. So I feel this is a great thing for boxing.
From a fan's perspective, not only is the issue of money, the fights itself. Given who Schaefer and Heyman have under their stable, look at their fighters. Their fighters are going to be limited in terms of who they fight. What did we talk about over this past spring? The fight that was being negotiated supposedly, but ended up not happening. Stevenson and Kovalev. Other fighters that Schaefer and Heyman got, let alone Mayweather, the potential fight with Manny, because look, that's gone. That's the main fight, but there are other fighters that they have in their camp. They can't get the best fight. They can't get the top fight. They can't get the fights that the people want because they want to separate themselves from now first Arum, now Golden Boy, that's going to be extended to other promoters. The Duvas, we talked about Steve. I just mentioned Stevenson and Kovalev. The Duvas, because Kovalev was signed to Duva.
And you know.
DeBella.
Yeah, and you know the dude, and you can know Kathy Duva would love to work with Golden Boy.
Absolutely, because I tell you this, if Stevenson was with Golden Boy right now, that fight with Kovalev would have been made, and it would happen later on this year, if not early next year.
Absolutely, but as long as Heyman's running his own brand of let's stay inside and leave everybody out there, you're never going to see a good fight. That's what I think it all comes down to. I think promoters just got sick of the environment where we can't make the best fights. And I think now we're starting to see what was really going on behind closed doors. It wasn't Oscar who didn't want to make the best fights, because he did. It was Richard Schaefer and Al Heyman. And it's starting to become clear that Bob Arum did not want this Cold War. It's becoming clearer and clearer when more and more stuff comes out. And you're still gonna have some stands saying, "Oh, it was always Arum," but listen, Arum has a reputation of working with everybody. He'll even work with his worst enemy. Everybody forgets he worked with Don King, and him and Don King do not like each other, and they've always worked together because it was always in the interest of business. And it made money, and it made sense. So at the end of the day, this is a great thing for boxing.
Aaron played a role, but at the end of the day, he wasn't the main problem. Let's move on to Eddie Hearn, who I mentioned. Eddie Hearn, who runs Matchroom Sport. A couple of weeks ago, he was in Atlantic City for I forgot the name of the bout. Went down a couple of weeks ago, but be that as it may, the bigger deal was that he mentioned in some interviews that he's willing to bring his Matchroom Sports to America to promote fights. He got Carl Frost. He has Ricky Burns. He has some other world champions on his stable. I look at this and I go to you on this one, Sean. I think this is a very smart and slick, wise move by Eddie Hearn. He has England right now. He is the top promoter in England, one of the top promoters in all of Europe. I think this has expanded his brand, expanded his promotional company to even a worldwide level, bringing business to the United States. Your thoughts on Eddie Hearn announcing that he wants to promote fights in the United States? And the question would be, if he's going to do that, who do you think he's going to work with? Do you think he's going to work with Top Rank? Do you think he's going to work with Golden Boy? HBO, Showtime, which direction do you see him going?
Enough respect to Eddie Hearn. I mean, he's been great for UK boxing, which sort of had that same old promoters controlling everything, and then he sort of came in. He's really created sort of a stir, sort of made it much more casual, fan-friendly, which I know a lot of haters on YouTube are going to be against because, of course, now they're going to have so many people against them. But it's been great for boxing, great for new fans. I mean, he's put great fights out there. I mean, him coming over, I think, just shows what he's always done. He wants to make good fights. Even if his guy will lose, like putting Burns against Crawford, it's a great fight. He's trying to put the best guys against each other. And in the big scheme of everything, I mean, it's great for boxing. It will work out for him because people are going to want to work with him knowing that he will make fights. And I think he's going to be open for working with Top Rank, Golden Boy, Duvas, and everyone. I mean, as far as the big networks, HBO and Showtime, I think he also comes from the lucky school that he sort of controls the UK media in a sense, so he's not reliant on them either.
I'll go to you on Kent. Do you see the potential of American fighters, prominent fighters here in America, prominent champions here in America? Do you think they will see what Hearn has to offer, what Matchroom Sport has to offer? For those who don't know the brief history, Eddie Hearn basically took over Matchroom Sports from his father, Barry Hearn. Barry Hearn promoted Chris Eubank, and others promoted Nigel Benn briefly. Do you think that American fighters and American world champions getting a taste, seeing what Matchroom Sport has to offer, do you see them, any prominent fighter, American fighters, potentially moving over to matchroom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Boxing is a global sport. You know, boxing is a very global sport, and I wouldn't be surprised if an American fighter were to cross over and say, listen, I'm going to go with the British promoter because he can get me the fights at a specific weight class. You know, if a 168 pounder from the U.S. decided, hey, let me go over and sign over with Hearn because he can guarantee me a big fight with one of the over in Europe, then of course that would be an opportunity. You also got the cruiserweights over there. You make a lot of money over there with the cruiserweights. It's interesting now, and with the cruiserweights, and then you have other potential matchups. I think boxing being a global sport, but yeah, boxing's a global sport. I think it's a really, really amazing. Boxing is I've never seen a sport blow up globally in the last few years as boxing. Not in term of mainstream, but you can see, boxing is becoming bigger in different parts of the world, and I think it's opening doors. It's absolutely opening doors, and I think we're going to see more, more promoters. From overseas signing American talent and vice versa. We're going to see a lot of that in the future. It's already, we see a lot of U.S. promoters doing it, but I think a lot of European promoters are going to start tapping into American talent. I can't see it not happening because I think a lot of European promoters want to open up, I think eventually you could see, even like the German promoters, look at them, they're starting to do work in Denmark. When was the last time you heard of a German promoter doing work in Denmark?
I mean, Kessler is signed with Southerland, I believe.
Yes, and they're also promoting various fighters from Denmark and Sweden and Norway, so they're opening up as well. And I think the next step for the German promoters is probably the U.S. They're probably close to tapping into this market too. And then you got, I just forgot. George Groves just signed with Southerland. So you can see how everything is starting to open up, and I think that's where boxing is going to thrive. And I forgot Price signed with Southerland too.
Yeah, I was mentioning Kessler. I mean Froch and Ricky Burns. The other fighter I was talking about was DeGale. He signed with Hearn and Matchroom Sports as well, and I think this is kind of a revolutionary move. Look, if Aram can do business in China, in Macau, I have no issue with Eddie Hearn moving over here and deciding to do business in the United States. I just think it's to me, it's very smart on Eddie Hearn, and again a bit of a revolutionary move to me. I had my issues with Hearn in the past, but the more I see of him, the more respect I am gaining towards him. I'm liking what he does, what he's doing in the boxing world.
Yeah, listen, no promoter's perfect. No promoter is squeaky clean, But at the end of the day, I think a lot of promoters are doing the right thing, I think, business-wise for their company, and their fighters. If they do the right thing business-wise and for their fighters, I don't have no problem with them. You do the right thing by the fighters and by the fans, and you do the right thing in that regard, shit. You already won me as a fan, but at the end of the day, this sport is so global. Now, you have a Chinese heavyweight making a pro debut in Nevada. When was the last time you heard something like that?
When was the last time you heard of a Chinese heavyweight?
I'm telling you, and I'm telling you right now, Larry Merchant, as kooky as people call him, he said there will be a heavyweight champion from China. He's not that far off. If a Chinese heavyweight's making a debut in the United States, he's on to something now,
And before I go to you for the last word on this subject, Sean, I will say this: given what De La Hoya is dealing with now with Schaefer and Heyman deciding to leave, if he was smart, I would connect with Eddie Hearn and do some dual promotions either here or abroad in the UK. I'm just saying, De La Hoya, if you listen when this podcast comes up and you get to hear this, I'm just giving you the word. If you were smart, that would be your move.
I don't think Oscar's going to let this slip away. I don't think Oscar's going to let this slip away. I think he's let things slip away too much the last few years with his various issues, and I think he's going to make the most of this now. I think he's, and you know what? I'm at the point where Schaefer and Heyman are just not going to do business with anyone. And if they want to do that, that's great. But you know what? That's not making any friends in boxing. A lot of people in boxing don't like that. That's basically telling them you're too good to be involved in our money. So at the end of the day, they can do what they want. To me, until they become an actual promotion, I'm not going to even pay them any mind because they're not doing what boxing needs them to do, and that's make good fights. They're not making good fights. If you're going to make a fight, you know, those type of fights, I'm not paying attention for real.
Last move before we move on to the fight previews and start shutting down the show, Sean, on this. Can you hear me, Sean?
Yep.
I was going to say last word on what we're talking about with Eddie Hearn and him making business in the United States before we move on to the fight preview and begin to shut down the show.
I like it. One door closes, another opens. I mean, out with the old and in with the new. You know, get rid of Schaefer and Al Heyman and bring in Eddie Hearn. I mean, it's good for boxing to make fights. Boxing fans can complain about who they support and which media people they like, but it doesn't mean shit. The only thing that matters is what fights are made. I don't care if Showtime, HBO promotes it. I don't care who's the people that are talking during the fights. It's just as long as we get the fights that we want, everybody wins.
Word. Let's move on and talk about the fights coming up this weekend. One main bout I really want to pay attention to, fight I like a lot, Terrence Crawford, coming off of his title win over Ricky Burns earlier this year, this past March, in Scotland to win the WBO lightweight title. He's going to be making his first defense, his initial defense against New York's Gamboa. Gamboa, two-time world champion at 126 and 130. Bout is going to be happening in Crawford's hometown, Omaha, Nebraska, this coming Saturday on HBO. And I go to you on this one, Sean. We've talked about this. Well, you weren't here, but I look at this fight. Look, Crawford is the better boxer. He's the favorite coming in. He's the bigger guy. But to me, even though Crawford should win, and he poses issues for Gamboa, the southpaw style, the skill, the speed, the defensive ability, I think that New York's Gamboa, because he has a lot to prove, because he has looked good in his last couple of bouts, because of his talent, his physical ability, I think he's going to give Crawford a much better fight than a lot of people expect. And I would not be surprised at all if Gamboa were to beat Crawford Saturday night. Crawford should win. I have him winning coming in because of the skill, because of the southpaw style, because of the height. But Gamboa, he's a live dog.
Well, I mean, anybody that's underestimating Gamboa is just ridiculous. I mean, which guy has done more in boxing, Gamboa or Crawford? Obviously, Gamboa. I mean, he's sort of been like Rigo and put himself out in an island in the last couple of years. But I mean, skill-wise, I mean, he's still the small Cuban Mike Tyson. You know, he's explosive. He's got power. He's fast, fast, fast. I mean, I think he's fighting a little heavier than he should be fighting. He'd be better like down at like 130. But you know, 5 pounds. You know, sometimes like Manny Pacquiao and them showed, speed is what matters more than necessarily size. But in this fight, saying all that, I mean, I still think Crawford, he's young. I see high hopes for him. He's got that long jab. He's really patient. He can go left or right. So, I mean, he can show different looks. And I think he's patient. And he has some pop that he's shown throughout. So I think if he starts early and uses that jab and movement and just get, you know, lots of feints and gets Gamboa to jump in there, he can counter him and turn the fight around. I mean, obviously, fighting a guy like Gamboa, he's dangerous. So, I mean, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a great fight with both guys going down at some point.
I go to you on this one, kid. Gamboa hasn't looked really good in his last 2 bouts against Michael Farinas, which he was knocked down, I believe.
Yes, he looked better.
He looked better, but he's performed better.
I agree that I can compare it to the Farinas.
But I was going to say that again, based on physical attributes alone, because of his speed, because of his explosiveness, because of the power, he can overcome the height advantage, the reach advantage, and what Crawford poses to give Crawford a very tough fight. And I think even though I have Crawford winning, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can have Gamboa pulling off the possible upset here.
Yeah, and this is the reason why. And it's not because I don't believe anything. I don't believe in Crawford. I think Crawford is immensely gifted. He fights for both the southpaw and the conventional stance. He's got speed. He's got power. He's very gifted. His hand speed is tremendous. I think he has a lot of things, you know, that can give Gamboa a world of problems. But my thing is like, it's the experience. I mean, even though Gamboa has been inactive and Gamboa hasn't really fought much, he has the better resume. At the end of the day, if you put resumes side by side, you're going to see Gamboa's resume is a lot better. Granted, a lot of those guys were smaller and slower. He still has wins over those guys, namely Ponce de Leon and Orlando Salido. And these are good names. I mean, these ain't names you know. These are no slouches. These are really good fighters that he's beaten. Not great fighters, but really good fighters that usually give many top level guys a tough night. And he's been able to pretty much beat them clearly. This is my thing now. I think Gamboa's best bet is to make it a really, really tense chess match. I think if Crawford's able to outwork him, I think Crawford's gonna win. But if Gamboa makes it a chess match and makes it a counterpunch fest, where who's gonna be quicker, I'm giving the edge to Gamboa. Because Gamboa, you know, he's a fast guy. People say, "Oh, well, Crawford's fast," but Gamboa is just as fast. He can get there just as quick, and he can punch. He's not you know, Sean's right. He is a little mini Mike Tyson because he can knock guys out with one shot. Okay, and I think that in a 12-round fight, it's good, which is against a guy of Gamboa's, you know, pedigree and stature. I think this is not going to be a fight where Crawford can do whatever he wants. He's going to have to earn this fight. He's going to have to earn this fight. He's going to have to. I think he's going to have to out hustle Gamboa, and he's going to have to push his size and youth on Gamboa. And I just don't think he can do that because I don't think Gamboa is going to let him. I think Gamboa's gonna, you know, he's gonna be able to hit him. He's gonna make him. I think he's gonna make Crawford respect him, especially on power and speed. And I think if it comes down to a chess match, I think Gamboa wins a very close decision.
Any follow-up comments, Sean?
I just think, like everything Ken said is true, but my one worry about Gamboa is that he's a bit of a prima donna. And,
yeah, he gets a little hot-headed at times, but I think if he fights his fight, it's all gonna come easy. I think we're gonna see him get hot-headed and overwhelmed if he lets Crawford use his physicality and just be a busier guy. I think that's where he can get into Gamboa's head. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, and if Crawford is able to use his skills to pick his spots and take away Gamboa's spots, then I see Gamboa getting frustrated and then getting sloppy. That's what I sort of was alluding to earlier, that I could see that he would start pushing a little more. And against a skilled fighter like Crawford, unlike the guys he's been fighting most recently, he could really get caught. But yeah, I mean, he's dangerous. So, when they say 50-50 fight, this is a 50-50 fight. You can't take anything from either one of these guys.
Man, in a fight like this, one mistake can mean the whole thing. That's how I look at this. One minor mistake could be a major catastrophe. That's what kind of fight this is. Even though it's 50-50, if you get caught with a good shot and knocked out, cold.
Even though Gamboa hasn't done much at 135 pounds, and this is for you, Sean, and you can follow up, Kent. Do you think these are the two best lightweights in the world? Because I do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I hate to ignore Vasquez because, I mean, he's done nothing except what he needs to do. And I could see him legitimately being those top three. And I could see him beating those guys as easy as they beat him. He's a tough, awkward fighter who knows what he needs to do to win. And then you have those two guys. I mean, Crawford, exciting because he's young. Gamboa, exciting because this is his last push. If he's going to do something, he needs to do it now. Especially if he wants to push for a Garcia fight after this. If he won this fight, he has a belt, his name would be back out there, and then the Garcia fight would probably be able to rematerialize.
Listen, I agree. This is not. Listen, who Crawford's fighting tonight is not no Greatest Prescott or Andre Klimov or even a Ricky Burns. This is a completely different class of fighter. And he's got to be on his P's and Q's. He's got to fight smart, and he's got to fight disciplined. If he tries to be busier, he has to do it in a smart way. He can't go about doing it in a reckless way. And that same goes for Gamboa, because we know Gamboa can be reckless. And that's what we love about him, because
of his reckless style, he can be hit.
And guess what? He can be hit and he can be dropped. But
right.
We've seen Gamboa get up and fight harder and smarter once he got dropped. That's why he reminds me a lot of Felix Trinidad, because once you drop him, it's like, all right, I get it. Okay, I'm in the fight now. That's what makes him so appealing. And even if he loses this fight, Gamboa, even if he loses this fight, I still think he has some fights down the line, and he could still be in some entertaining scraps. But I think if he's going to do anything on the elite level, he's got to do it Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to end the show on that note. I will say that next week there will not be a show, as we're going to observe the July 4th holiday, the July 4th weekend holiday, I should say. I'll go to you on this, Kent. For folks who want to chop it up and talk boxing to you, tell them where they can find you.
You can reach me at facebook.com/kent.ayers.1. We're not going to have a show next week, but if you want to talk about the Gamboa fight or the middleweight prospect fight that's on the undercard, which everybody should check out, that's going to be a very good fight, or Burns and his fight tomorrow, or any fights that are coming up this week, and hit me up. Just hit me up. But if you see me on the show, leave me a message. Let me know. I will add you if you let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. And since Sean, he dropped out on us, and thanks for being on the show with us, Sean. You can get information on him. You can just go to his YouTube page. You look up Sean Newton on YouTube, Sean Newton on Google+. You can find him in Talk Boxing.
Yeah, Sean Newton, I just want to say that Sean Newton's everywhere on boxing videos. Anywhere there's a boxing video, he is there, and he does talk boxing. And he knows the stuff. So if you see him, around, just hit him up.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to find me, y'all know where it is. Find me. You can go to Brother JR at MICWIL JRSC on Twitter. You can go to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog page, P4P Boxing Report.wordpress.com. Podcast page, P4P Boxing Report.podomag.com. You can find links on where to find the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. All over Facebook, all of the social media, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, Tumblr, Twitter, Pinterest, the RSS feed. Twitter handle where you can donate your account and whatnot. And as I said, there will not be a show next week, but when we return, we will talk about Canelo Alvarez and Erislandy Lara. We will talk about their fight heavy, and I'm in the process. I'm in the process of trying to do a all-female show where we'll have all four ladies only. Ladies Love Boxing 2. And I'm trying to work on that, trying to get an all-ladies show where it'll be just nothing but the ladies sitting here talking boxing with yours truly. Any last words before we head out, Ken?
Yeah, enjoy the fights this weekend. I want to say, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, support boxing. Just support boxing. You know, it's a great time to watch fights. You know, we have a great fight this weekend. You know, we've had great fights coming up this summer, and we're gonna have great fights in the fall. So support boxing, be critical of boxing, and just watch the sport. That's it.
Yeah, and big shout out to everybody who shared the show on Twitter. My boxing brother from another mother, Wingy Boxing, Casey Morrissey on Twitter, Neils on Wheels on Twitter, June from Harlem on Twitter, the 8-Bit Animal, everybody on Facebook and on Google Plus who support the show, Amma who donated his account, Wayne Thomas 73, Miss Soul Power, and everybody who supports the show, who follows the show, who shares the show. Thank you for your support. This has been another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. For my co-host Kent, I'm your host Michael. This has been the show. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining us this evening. Y'all have a good night, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Good night.
Good night.